For the next session, 3 interesting guests will take turns during a round table. Please welcome Stefan de Schuyter, Geert Kuijken and Bart de Bodt. But I start with you. Stefan, you're a technologist and an expert on artificial intelligence and machine learning. We've just watched the very inspiring video on the Formula One and the AMG Mercedes partnership. What is HPE? What's its contribution in this partnership?
Yes, good morning. Well, indeed, so the Formula One is a very fantastic use case for us. It's a very interesting use case when it comes to analyzing data at the edge. We are an edge-to-cloud company, and we offer the solutions in that full spectrum. Of course, Formula One, we have seen in the previous presentation, in the previous session, that the partnership we have with the Red Bull team, with the Aston Martin team. But we also have a very important partnership with the Formula One team of Mercedes. So they are, I think, 7 times a world championship. And we were very proud that we are not only sponsoring, but really a technology partnership in that sense. And we go way back with Formula One team. And I must honestly say it was about in the meantime, 2 years ago, where at the last live event of HPE Discovery in Madrid, we had the opportunity to have the Toto Wolff and Lewis Hamilton on stage explaining the importance of data analytics in Formula One. And by the way, people, if you simply go on YouTube and you Google HPE Discover Lewis Hamilton, you fall back on the live stage, on the video, which is still available. And it's a very inspiring interview by Antonio Neri. And here you see in the picture Toto Wolff explaining, and it's about 22 minutes because it's nearly an hour, the video. So after 22 minutes, it really explains how important it is, the real-time aspects of data analytics. And at a certain moment, Lewis Hamilton explains during the, I would say, the test races, typically on Saturdays, he only has a time slot of 40 seconds where his experience with the car is matched and tested and fine-tuned with what's coming out from data analytics. As you can imagine, that's the car, the engine, the aerodynamics. It's an engine full with sensors, and so it's a really opportunity for us to use that information to improve the technology, and it boosts our research and development in that sense. And in the next slide, I think there is a picture also of Matt Harris, and you see it here on the screen. He holds an edge device, and that is the type of systems which are used in the pit. So these are the systems that in real-time analytics are used, and this is the technology which we use at the pit. And again, also a separate video on YouTube where Matt Harris explains how it is set up. Mm-hmm. So yeah, really inspiring. Yeah, well, but Stefan, of course, the big majority of people are not a Formula One pilot. So what's no. So in what sense is this case relevant for the customer? Yeah, that's of course a very important one. Well, the first concrete example here in Europe and also in Belgium is Volvo, for example. We are working with one of the entities that is developing the autonomous driving, is a company, Zenuity, Zenseact. Recently they changed name, and this is of course, and also in automotive, it's a very important example, specifically on high performance computing, because we deliver the high performance computing for Zenseact, for Volvo as a service also. But another use case is here, the Port of Antwerp. So when we talk about IoT, AI, it's all about 5G, and we see 5G growing in importance. And this is not theory. Private 5G is active here in the Port of Antwerp. In Belgium, I would say, this is the ultimate place where you will see the boost of communication, high bandwidth communication, and it's in that context that we have the experience to build these systems. We typically see that customers are starting with AI. And you can do that. It's open source. With 10 lines of code, you can build something intelligent. So it's obvious it's a fantastic time these days. But we see a lot of AI projects fail, and they fail typically on making that, deploying it at enterprise scale. So a lot of AI projects fail in that specific context. And it's there that is the focus of our company. What should you do to connect, protect, deploy, and not massively scale these type of, I would say, rather complex technology environments. And this is a challenge for us, and this is also an opportunity for us to in collaboration, for example, with Xylos and the entity of Packard, for example. That is the entity that when we're talking about IoT and Xylos, well, we make the technology, we are focusing on mission critical aspects. So for many years, we have the experience to build these computer systems. By the way, 2/3 of all financial transactions worldwide are powered by HPE. So not a lot of people know that. And on the other sense, it's also, for example, the acquisitions that we did a few years ago of Silicon Graphics, Cray Computer. These are the leader technologies of high-performance computing. It's a combination of intelligence at the edge and the high-performance computing which is required to go forward in an AI perspective.
Mm-hmm. So how does HPE use artificial intelligence in their own business?
Yeah, in fact, I would say we have the example of Formula One. It's an extreme example where milliseconds is, but I would say the biggest use case I typically use is HPE ourselves. So AI has transformed completely the way we build technology and the way we service that technology. So that's the core of what we do. If you're talking about the business transformation as a result of AI, well, that is what we stand for as HPE. For example, one of the key aspects what we see today is making technology intelligent, means, like you see in the Formula One, we capture the data worldwide of all the systems that are installed at customers. We gather that information. We move customers from a more reactive way of managing their IT infrastructure to a more proactive way with completely autonomous, with intelligence behind the screen. And one of the examples is our cloud-based solution, which is called InfoSight. And InfoSight is a cloud service where customers get a view in a secure way. The data is gathered from their systems in production, and we are able to see what needs to be fine-tuned, not on the car of the Formula One, but on the systems that they're using in their production environments, from the edge to the core to the cloud. And that is a very compelling story, and that differentiates us really on the market. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much, Stefan, for giving me these very interesting examples. Thank you. And I welcome my next guest, Geert Kuijken. He is the enterprise architect at HPE. And let's elaborate a bit on the cloud. HPE, Geert, does not have its own public cloud. So how does HPE position itself against, for example, AWS, Google, and Microsoft?
Yeah. Good morning. It's correct, we don't have our own cloud. We used to have one, but a number of years ago we decided to stop that. We didn't want to compete with the large hyperscalers like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. Instead, we take the position that we want to be a neutral advisor and help customers decide which applications can move to the cloud, to which cloud. So define the likely candidates and the work it would entail to incorporate cloud in the way of doing business. So helping cloud migrations, basically. Having said that, the way we look at cloud has changed a lot the last decennium, I guess. In the first days of cloud, people said everything will move to cloud and it will be the end of on-premise IT as we know it.
But that's not the case.
It's not the case. It's turned out very differently. Analysis shows today that as much as 70% of applications still run on-premise, and 30% has in fact moved to public cloud. So in other words, the easy stuff has been migrated. What rests now is the more difficult bit. So that's where people really need help. So cloud is definitely here to stay, but whether this ratio of 30-70 is going to stay or change fundamentally, it's very difficult to say. What is very important though is that we realize that the cloud way of working has found its way to the enterprise. And people like the as-a-service aspect, the self-service aspect, the pay-per-use systems. And people are looking for a way to implement that way of working also for their on-premise infrastructure.
So what should companies take into account or into consideration before migrating to the cloud? Could you give them some hints and some tips?
That is a huge question. And there is lots of things to think about. One of the things that often comes up is security. And I think we have to be frank in terms of physical security, access to the data center. It's very difficult to do better than what these public hyperscalers do. But that's only one aspect. You can look at high availability, and it's basically the application needs we need to look at. If your application needs to be very high available, we express this in number of nines, so 99.9% uptime or 99.99, and you count the number of nines, and the more nines, the better. On-premise, it is possible to achieve 6 nines uptime for a storage box, for example. We can demonstrate that. And there are even guarantees that give you 100% uptime, guarantees. If you compare that with the service level agreement you get from public clouds, typically they limit themselves at 3 nines. So if you have a highly available application, you have to ask yourself the question, is 3 nines enough? That would amount to hours of downtime per year. Of course, you never know when those hours of downtime are going to be, so it may be at a very inconvenient moment. So with that respect, is cloud migration interesting for this application? Another aspect is performance. We know what the performance is for on-premise IT. There's decades of experience. And you can hire virtual machines in the cloud, and you see what the size is, the number of cores and the amount of memory you get. You don't get an indication of the speed of the CPU behind it. So you haven't got all the aspects of performance under control, and that's something you have to take account of. You may lose in performance of your application if you migrate it to the cloud. Another thing is cost, and then you have to look at total cost of ownership. The impression of cloud is it's very cheap. You rent a virtual machine by the hour, and it's a small amount. But if you use the cloud to run your steady state workloads for many years at a constant level, you probably spend more than you would if you run it on-premise. So cloud isn't really suited for structural long-term use. It is extremely interesting for peaks. If you say, I size my on-premise infrastructure for what I mainly need, and if I have 2 weeks per year that I need much more power, I take those 2 weeks from the cloud. I get invoiced just for those 2 weeks. I don't have to invest in extra machines, nor people to set those up and manage them, or data center space. That also eats costs. So a TCO argument is very important, and it's case by case dependent how big you make the T. I mean, the total cost of ownership. The total can be all-encompassing, or it can be more limited depending on what you really want to do. And then there is the aspect of regulations. In many sectors, there are strict laws and regulations that dictate where the data needs to be. If you have your own data center, it's clear my data is in my basement. If you migrate to the cloud, you haven't got control. They may guarantee it's in Europe, but in which country, you don't know. And it may even change day by day, depending on their load balancing algorithms. They move things around. So you have to make sure that in your sector, the regulations allow you to go to cloud with all the things that it implies. So those are basic things. If you just want to do a lift and shift, take an application, move it in the cloud, you have to think about those things. But there are more dimensions. To make optimal use of the cloud, you really have to look at the way your application is written. Cloud is built to give you automatic scalability. And the typical application that we built 20 years ago is the opposite. It's monolithic, it's fixed. So to get optimal use of the scalability that the cloud offers, you really have to look at a rewrite, at least of part of the applications, and often of the complete application. And that takes time, that takes cost. It's difficult to do, you need advice and help. So that can be a hindrance on moving to cloud as well. So what you can do in those cases, if you can't really rewrite your application, you go to your ISV or supplier and say, do you have as a service version of this application, in which case the migration should be fairly easy. You stay with the same application. Or you have to look to another ISV if a SaaS version doesn't exist. You have to migrate to another type of application that is delivered as a service from the cloud. And again, then you have more of a migration project to go through. So for all of those that work, many companies are not capable to do that completely by themselves. And for that, they need partners. You need partners to help in that migration. And you have to look also, the typical Belgian small medium enterprise will probably find it difficult to be noticed by the Googles, the Amazons and the Microsofts, and to be treated with the amount of respect, let's call it that they might get from a local player. So not everything goes to hyperscalers. There is a very important role for the smaller local cloud service providers who can have a more business relationship, a more partnership with the companies in our territory here. And that may be an advantage. So service provider selection, of course, that will also be made on the basis of what is their catalog, what is the services that they can deliver me, and does that fit with what I need to do from a business. And then last point, not every cloud migration project is going to be a success. It's a fact of life. Sometimes things fail. So you have to think about an exit strategy too. If you fail fast at the beginning, that's fine. You haven't invested too much. You don't lose too much by going back and going away from the cloud again. But say a project fails after a year, which means most of your data will have been migrated to the cloud. Then the question is, can I get it back? In what format can I get it back? What will it cost me? Because these cloud providers will charge more if you take data out than when you put data in. And of course, how long will it take? How big a capacity is there on the line? So if I spend 2 weeks just to get my data back, and then I get it back in a file format that I can't use in my on-premise application anymore, you have another problem. So an exit strategy is something that you need to think about from the beginning of a cloud migration project.
Earlier on, you mentioned the importance of thinking where the data is located geographically. So is the cloud still relevant with the growing importance of IoT and edge computing, for example?
Absolutely. In fact, we can prove this in 2 ways. Everybody has a smartphone. If your smartphone runs Android, most of the communications will be directly from your edge device, your smartphone, directly to the Google data centers, nothing in between. So edge and cloud work together in that sense, and everybody has it in the consumer world. So that's one proof point, edge and cloud work together. The second proof point is that if you look at the developments going on at Google, at Microsoft, at Amazon, you can see that they are building on-premise infrastructure. For Google, this is called Anthos. For Microsoft, this is Azure Stack Hub. And for Amazon, this is Outposts. And what they do in all those 3 cases, they take the software stack that they run in their data centers, they bundle it on hardware, and they deliver that hardware on-premise to the customers. That gives advantages if you have a development, an application development that uses an edge-to-cloud kind of way of working, that you have the same environments in both cases, which means you can run the same code on-premise as you can do in the cloud, and that for developers is paradise. You don't have to have 2 unconnected development tracks, so that works very well together. And in the way that most edge applications are used, the smartphone example is extreme. In many cases, if you have data coming into an edge device, you will want to analyze it and treat it before it gets to a data center. I'm looking at things like video analysis. You do that in real time. So you haven't really got the time to wait for that signal to go round trip to the cloud and be analyzed and then come back for a decision. If you're steering a process, your latency, the reaction time is extremely important. So everything in the cloud will not be interesting. You need an edge device that has sufficient horsepower to do the calculation, the analysis in real time, right close by the data. Yeah, so edge and cloud certainly work together. And as I said in the beginning, what we learned is that the cloud way of working is finding its way everywhere. And it's going into the local data centers and also coming into the edge. So everything is moving to an as-a-service model, subscription model, no capex, but a fixed monthly fee and a variable costing scenario, which makes it much easier for people to adapt to this new way of working.
Well, thank you very much. It was very interesting. Thank you, Geert. And my last speaker is Bart de Bodt. Bart, very welcome. You know all about HEP as a service offering and HPE Green Lake. We will talk about that later on. Already your colleague Geert talked about the cloud and the importance of continuous innovation for companies. So to be very concrete, how can HPE help companies in their digital transformation?
Well, we can help, and the strategy of our company is to help customers to accelerate that digital transformation. And what we have seen for many customers is that there are 3 obstacles, to say, that are preventing them to get there. And this is related to technology, economics, and people. Now, first, technology. We have heard the stories about innovative solutions. Now, getting there for a customer or a company may not be that easy. So if you look at the big evolution today of the data explosion and how data is being generated at the edge by mobile devices, retail stores, CCTV, and so on. So customers, companies will have to take a decision on the right mix of destinations to handle this all. Capture it, process it, analyze it, store it, and so on. So it may be difficult for customers to know how to handle this. And in addition, if they look at their on-premise IT, they may have to take decisions on what kind of intelligent storage platform do they need. Do they need high-performance computing? Maybe some software-defined solution to get an answer to their questions. So that's easy, and we feel that customers are in need for help over there. Second is the economics. Digital transformation and the financial strategy of a company are related, because if they have in their own data center assets underutilized and they have capital invested in this, then this is not going to help their innovation track. And last obstacle that we see is related to people. We see that companies do need resources to get into that innovation, but they are not always able to free up those resources to focus on what is important for them and for their business and to innovate. So this is what we have seen, and yeah, we thought, what can we do more specific for the on-site part of the IT of a customer, and what do they look like, for instance, in the public cloud? And what is so attracting to the public cloud is that it's easy, it's very accessible, and yeah, customers find the right solution immediately. And this is what we wanted to do for the data center that the customer has, is trying to simulate that same experience that the public cloud is giving them, but in their own data center. And that's why we created our model, which is called Green Lake. And in fact, Green Lake contains first the technology. We have the right technology to build a hybrid cloud platform. And we believe that this platform is what will accelerate the digital transformation. But second, we are going to wrap that technology into a pay-per-use model, so that customers are not faced anymore with huge investments upfront. And this will help the financial obstacles. And third, what we include in our Green Lake model is related to people. We are going to include services in Green Lake, so that companies are able to free up resources in order to focus on innovation. So, in fact, with this kind of model, we make innovative solutions much more accessible to customers. And well, how do we do this? Is first of all, we're going to look what kind of workload that the customer needs, and we are going to right-size that technology, not providing too much, but just enough with a buffer capacity, so that there's always easy to scale. Customer will pay for this model in a pay-per-use, and together HPE and Xylus are able to put in the right services to the customer, so that they are able to free up the required resources. Now, this is also the ideal solution for legacy workloads. We have heard the story before. There may be reasons why customers are not able to move the specific workloads to a public cloud, and this can be cost, data gravity, compliancy, specific performance requirements, and so on. So also for that reason, having such a cloud-like model in the customer's data center is very interesting for them. And what we also see is the opposite. Workloads that are today running in the public cloud may, for one of these reasons, have to turn back to an on-site environment. So eventually, customers will have an environment consisting of public cloud, possibly multiple clouds, private cloud, and an on-premise environment. And with Green Lake, we can fill in the gap for that last piece and give them the same experience from the cloud in their own data center. As we say, for us, the cloud is not a destination, but rather an experience. And by having this model, we believe that we can help customers to accelerate in their digital transformation.
Well, thank you. And does provide HPE the Green Lake model to an entire on-premise IT environment as well?
Yes, we do. In fact, in 2019, we announced that by 2022, so it's coming close, that our whole portfolio will be available in a pay-per-use model. So, and we have had this model, in fact, for many years, almost 10 years. We were able to provide customers with pay-per-use models for compute and storage. Now, since that announcement, we have seen a very big acceleration in our own offering as a service. So we have heard the stories about AI and so on. So also this kind of workloads, MLOps containers, VDI, SAP HANA, we are able to put in an as-a-service model. And this is really opening up the door for many companies to get close to these innovative technical solutions that they require. Mm-hmm. Now, in order to do so, we rely on partners. We have an ecosystem of technology partners that help us and which we can include, of course, in our model. We as HPE, we provide the infrastructure, but on top we need others to cooperate. We have technology partners such as Cohesity, Veeam, VMware, Microsoft that can be perfectly integrated into our Green Lake model. And how does it actually work? Well, we have the customer deciding on a workload, and as said, we are going to right size, which is very important in our model because we want to prevent over-provisioning, which is costing a lot, but also preventing that customers run out of capacity in their own data center. And then starting from there, we define a unit of measure. This means that we are going to define how we are going to measure the capacity consumption for a customer. And easy examples is that, for instance, for computers can be core utilization or a physical server and so on. For storage, it can be terabyte or gigabyte. So that's the first definition, unit of measure. Second is a unit price. If you invoice customers every month, it's based on a unit price. And in our unit price, we include everything. So it's very easy. We will have the infrastructure, software, hardware, but also the installation that we have to do first day, but also the recurring installations for every extension that we do in the customer's data center. Also the required support to keep it running so that we prevent systems from going down, and if it happens, that we are as fast as possible to get it fixed again. And of course, this is a consumption model, so we include the whole structure of capacity management into the Green Lake model, so that this is a no-brainer for the customer. No worries about this, to have it all managed at the right time. So since this is all about consumption, it's important that we are going to measure how much the consumption has been. And we do this twice a day. And the purpose is, of course, to report back to the customer the consumption of a month, but also for us to be able to provide the customer with enough capacity into his data center. So this is crucial to the model. This way we provide a full consumption model to the customer, and we are convinced that it will also help to bring that cloud experience into their own data center.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the customer several times, but what exactly are the advantages or the benefits of the HPE Green Lake model?
Well, we have several. We are supported by a study of Forrester Consulting, which is called the Total Economic Impact of HPE Green Lake. And in fact, what they did is they have analyzed our existing customers, and they reported back on several advantages, and these are related to cost, time, and risk. First of all, cost. As said, we are putting in our model a way that the customer does not have to do any upfront investment. In addition, we prevent over-provisioning, which is today costing a lot of money for customers for assets that are not really used. But at the same time, we prevent customers from running out of capacity, which is also hurting the business very much. And so at any time, we are able to align the cost of IT to the real business need. And this is reporting a very cost-efficient way to customers to work. Second advantage is related to risk. We are able to mitigate the risk in different ways. And first of all, it's a technical risk mitigation, because we provide a model. It's a working model. It's supported with right services. So this is very important. Another risk mitigation is related to the financials aspect. Customers are not running any financial risk by stepping into this model. And the third one is related to be less dependable on internal resources to keep such a model running. So this is a second important role. Last one is related to time. Time is very important in the business today, and with this model we can remove a very tough procurement process out of from the customer. It does not happen anymore, and by putting in the infrastructure with a buffer, we prevent that. We allow the customer to scale up very easy in capacity. So cost reduction, going faster to the market, and everything related to risk mitigation is very important. And this is not only slideware. We are able to really quantify these benefits for the customer and put an amount against it. And this makes the total cost of ownership for the customer very interesting in the Green Lake model.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much, Bart, for mentioning all these advantages for the customer of the Green Lake model. But I suggest that we watch a video on the Green Lake model.
Let's face it, public cloud wasn't built to handle everything. But that's okay, because now you can bring a new kind of cloud experience to all your apps and data, no matter where they live. Meet the next generation of cloud services from HPE Green Lake, a simple, open platform built for everything from edge to cloud, all delivered as a service. So how does it work? You answer a few questions, select the services you want, choose one of 3 built-to-order sizes, get a price, and get your pre-configured services delivered on-site and installed by experts across your locations in as few as 14 days. If you need more, add more with a simple point and click. HPE Green Lake works with everyone you work with. This one, that one, pretty much all the ones. See all your services in a single window, with more insights, visibility, and control. When resources can launch within minutes, developers can deploy without constraints. Finance can control costs and preserve cash flow. And it's easy to transform operations, innovate, and get to market faster. Up to 75% faster. That's HPE Green Lake. Faster, simpler, better than ever. A cloud experience over 99% of customers are staying with. Built by the people who've done it for a decade. So let's rewind. Get everything as a service, built to order, add services with a click, pay as you go. Have it managed for you. HPE Green Lake, the cloud that comes to you.